Season 1 of Narcos Mexico introduces DEA agent Kiki Camarena as he moves his family from California to his new post in Guadalajara. Kiki is ambitious and wants to bring real justice to the drug trade in Mexico, but he quickly learns that there are many roadblocks in the Mexican government preventing him from doing his job correctly. Just as Kiki is arriving in Guadalajara to make a name for himself, so too is Miguel Ángel Felix Gallardo. Felix is an ex-cop from Sinaloa working under the drug lord Pedro Aviles, but the Mexican government is constantly interfering with their enterprise, and Felix has his eyes set much higher. He convinces his boss to let him travel to Guadalajara to unify the various plazas and form the first Mexican cartel. And when Aviles lacks the forward-thinking vision of Felix and tries to have him killed for stepping out of line, Felix has his former boss murdered. Felix's Guadalajara Cartel, also known as the Federation, not only takes all of the various plazas under its control, but is also in the pockets of important figures in the government and law enforcement, making the whole organization practically untouchable. Helping Felix lead this cartel is his longtime friend and partner Rafa, and Aviles' old partner Don Neto. Rafa has developed a seedless strain of marijuana, making it lighter and easier to transport. With the resources of the cartel behind him, Rafa is able to plant a marijuana super farm covering over 1,300 acres in the Mexican desert. There are three main plazas in the Guadalajara cartel: Sinaloa, Juarez, and Tijuana. In Sinaloa, Felix appoints Palma as leader, with Chapo and Cochiloco working under him. Juarez is led by Pablo Acosta, but Felix sends Don Neto's nephew Amado Carrillo Fuentes to ensure the plaza's loyalty and production remain high. And in Tijuana, Felix passes up his old friend Isabella to let Benjamin Arellano Felix and his family lead the plaza. With the power of his super farm and his network of aligned plaza leaders, Felix Gallardo quickly becomes known as the Godfather and begins to draw the attention of the DEA. But that doesn't stop his plans for expansion, and he soon got his eyes set on an even more lucrative drug, cocaine. Felix heads to Colombia to meet with both the Cali cartel and the Medellin cartel, run by Pablo Escobar, and cuts a deal to use his resources to transport their cocaine into the US. This deal would bring in billions of dollars for the Federation. But it's not all smooth sailing for Felix, as he is constantly having to solve problems created by his associates. Rafa becomes addicted to cocaine and grows increasingly frustrated and erratic as Felix's focus shifts from Rafa's weed to the Colombian's cocaine. This leads to Rafa forming a rivalry with Amado for supremacy in Felix's line of trust. When Kiki Camarena and his fellow DEA agents, aided by the Mexican army, raid Rafa's marijuana plantation and burn the whole thing to the ground, the conflict between the cartel and the DEA escalates into an all-out war. Felix wants to move past losing the marijuana crop, knowing the real money was now in the cocaine deal anyway, but his allies in the government pressure him into retaliating by kidnapping Kiki. When Felix refuses, not wanting to escalate a war with the US government, El Azul, the Director General of Mexico's corrupt Federal Security Directorate, turns to Rafa to get the job done. Rafa, on a cocaine bender and feeling resentful that his farm was destroyed, agrees to the plan. And so DEA agent Kiki Camarena is kidnapped by the cartel and tortured for information on what intel the US has on the Federation. Knowing his government allies have turned on him, Felix implores Rafa and Don Neto to flee. Hoping to make peace on all sides, Felix makes the decision to tip off the DEA to Rafa's whereabouts. This leads to Rafa's arrest, which Felix hopes will also lead to Kiki's rescue and put an end to the DEA's manhunt. Felix then decides to retreat back to Sinaloa and asks the governor, a father figure to him, to aid in his protection. The governor agrees for a steep price, but then betrays Felix to the authorities. Kiki's boss at the DEA's Guadalajaran Bureau, Jaime, is doing everything in his power to rescue his friend, but at every step in the process, corrupt members of Mexican government and law enforcement impede his attempts. After taking the obstruction to the media and making international headlines, Jaime is finally able to make progress, but unfortunately it's too late, and Kiki's dead body is discovered, having been tortured and murdered on Felix's orders. As law enforcement goes to arrest Felix following the Sinaloan governor's first tip-off, Jaime is forced to sit on the sidelines after being deemed too emotional. And so when Felix's hideout is raided, it's not Jaime or any other DEA agent making the arrest. It's the Mexican police led by Comandante Calderone, who Felix is able to cut a deal with. Felix offers up enough evidence to put away his ally Don Neto, while also keeping evidence that he could use to blackmail Mexican government officials, re-solidifying his position as head of the Guadalajara Cartel. And so Felix escapes arrest and regains the backing of his corrupt political allies. Thinking Felix's position has been weakened, his old friend Isabella tries to stage a coup to have Tijuana leader Benjamin take over the entire federation. But the newly re-empowered Felix Gallardo arrives to crash the meeting, dismissing Isabella and reclaiming ultimate control. As season 1 comes to a close, a defeated Jaime is set to return to America, but before he leaves, he is reassured that Kiki Camarena's death will not go unpunished, and the Mexican drug war would be played by very different rules moving forward. The DEA is beginning Operation Leyenda and sending a special task force led by Agent Walt Breslin to avenge Kiki's death and bring down the Guadalajara Cartel once and for all. I want to cut in real quick and tell you about this video's sponsor, Kitsch. Listen, I'm getting older, my hair isn't as thick as it once was, and there's definitely less of it now than there was even a year ago. So I've really been making a concerted effort to take better care of my hair, and that's where Kitsch comes in. They make really great essential beauty and wellness products that turn my everyday routine into something special. Because everyone should feel confident no matter your hair type, style, or budget. I've been using Kitsch's rice water protein shampoo and conditioner bars, and they're incredible. I'll be honest, I didn't know shampoo and conditioner bars were even a thing, but they've been making my hair look fuller and healthier. And they help reduce single-use plastic, so they're just as good for the environment as they are for my hair. I just put the shampoo or conditioner in this beauty bar bag and it lathers right up. I've also been using their rosemary and biotin hair and scalp oil, and I've already noticed my hair looking thicker with some reduced thinning. And there are so many other great products that I use, like a detoxifying charcoal body wash, a self-draining soap dish where I can store all of my bars, and I even sleep on their satin pillowcases for healthier and happier hair and skin. With my code RECAP and CHILL, you'll get 25% off site-wide that auto-applies at checkout. That means a shampoo and conditioner combo costs less than $25. They also have a subscription option for an even better deal. Kitsch ships in the US and internationally to over 90 countries. So start your hair health journey with Kitsch right now. And once again, use my link in the description or use promo code RECAP and CHILL to get 25% off your order, which auto-applies at checkout. You guys supporting the brands that sponsor me help me continue making content like this, and thanks to Kitsch, you'll be doing it with an incredible looking head of hair. So thanks to you and thanks to Kitsch, now let's get back to the recap. In season 2 of Narcos Mexico, Felix Gallardo has his eyes set on further expansion. Not content to simply transport the Colombians' cocaine, he wants to push them out and get into selling the product himself. But that plan is a lot easier said than done, especially when he has to deal with the constant infighting of his plaza leaders. In Juarez, Amado is forced to play a reluctant babysitter role to Pablo Acosta, who is shirking his leadership duties to play house with an American woman named Mimi and going off on honorable revenge missions against a rival. Amado manages to mostly keep Acosta in line, but Acosta's head is no longer in the game and he's searching for a way out. In Sinaloa, tired of having to deal with the Arellano Felix family in Tijuana, Chapo devises his own route to traffic drugs across the US-Mexico border. Buying a warehouse in Mexico and a plot of land in America, Chapo starts work on an underground tunnel that would cut out any business ties the Sinaloans would need with Tijuana. In Tijuana, Benjamin's sister Enadina strikes up a secret side deal with Isabella to use the Tijuana Plaza's resources to traffic their own supply of cocaine into America. Meanwhile, Benjamin is constantly bickering with Sinaloa heads Palma, Cochiloco, and Chapo, eventually escalating into a violent and deadly tit-for-tat, which includes murders on both sides and the destruction of Chapo's underground tunnel. Eventually, Benjamin pressures Felix into allowing him to make the ultimate power move, ordering the death of Cochiloco. And it's not just the plaza leaders that are causing problems for Felix Gallardo's Federation expansion plans. DEA agent Walt Breslin and his team from Operation Leyenda are utilizing any means necessary to take Felix down. Eventually, they manage to capture Ruben Zuno Arce, the owner of the house that Kiki Camarena was murdered in. Arce had incriminating dirt on Felix that would put him away for good, but he refuses to testify in front of the grand jury. This loss puts an official end to Operation Leyenda, but Walt and his team are given the go-ahead to continue their mission off-book. Walt's next move is offering Pablo Acosta a plea deal that would allow him to enter witness protection in America with Mimi. But unfortunately, Acosta is also a target of the FBI and DFS, who kill Acosta in an assault on the small town he is hiding in. With his plaza heads constantly at odds and the DEA closing in on him, Felix is forced to become more creative and ruthless. When Palma is caught scheming behind Felix's back following the death of Cochi Loco, Felix calls for Palma's death. The Sinaloan leader manages to evade the hit, but his wife and children aren't as lucky. When a new progressive presidential candidate wins the Mexican election, Felix has his men storm polling stations to alter the votes in favor of Felix's political allies. Felix's plan to push the Colombians out of the cocaine business backfires when they cut a deal with Guerra, leader of the Gulf region, to transport their supply. To keep the Colombians happy, Felix vastly overcompensates and promises to transport as much cocaine as the Colombians could give him, a sum totaling about 70 tons. Walt's team plans a raid on the 70-ton shipment of cocaine, but when they arrive at the airstrip, they discover they've fallen into a trap. Most of Walt's team is killed, and he barely escapes with his own life. Felix manages to successfully transport the 70 tons of cocaine, and Walt's failure leads to him being reassigned back to America. Feeling back on top, Felix tips off law enforcement in California about the location of 20 tons of Colombian coke, leading to the largest cocaine seizure in history. This weakens the Colombians enough for Felix to finally get what he's long desired, his own supply of cocaine to sell. But that's where Felix's successes come to an end. At a meeting with the plaza heads to inform them of the new cocaine deal, they all instead withdraw from the Federation. The deaths of Cochi Loco, Palma's family, and Felix's continuing power trips have pushed them all over the edge. And so the Federation disbands, with Benjamin and the Arellano Felix family continuing to run Tijuana, Palma, Azul, and Chapo running Sinaloa, Amado and Aguilar running Juarez, and Guerra and his family running the Gulf. With the disbandment of the Federation, Felix has lost all of his power. Looking to appease the American government, Mexican officials are finally on board to arrest Felix, and he no longer has the power to stop them. And so, Felix Gallardo is finally taken into custody. As the season comes to a close, Walt Breslin, now working under Jaime in the DEA's El Paso office, pays a visit to Felix in prison. And though the leader of the Guadalajara Cartel is now finally behind bars, Felix assures Walt that the worst is yet to come. With no leader keeping the various cartel heads in line, chaos will ensue. In Season 3 of Narcos Mexico, the arrest of Felix Gallardo has left a power vacuum amidst the drug trade in Mexico, and the various cartel heads all begin fighting for supremacy. Amado Carrillo Fuentes quickly asserts himself as the new kingpin, killing his fellow Juarez cartel leader Aguilar to instead forge an alliance with Carlos Hank Gonzalez, an extremely wealthy and powerful politician and businessman that bankrolls the Juarez cartel into new heights. Amado devises a new cell system for the cartel, ensuring that if one cell is taken down by the authorities, the other cells can still continue to thrive. And to help his expanding operation, Amado brings in his brother Vicente, a brutally violent killer. Meanwhile, the Tijuana cartel, led by Benjamin and Ramon Arellano Felix, begin to grow in their own power, squeezing out the rival Sinaloa cartel, who struggle to smuggle their product into America. When Benjamin refuses to sell a border area to Sinaloan leaders Palma and El Chapo, they forge an alliance with an independent smuggler known as El Mayo, who agrees to transport their shipments by boat. Chapo then leads his men to violently attack the Tijuanans, killing the husband of Benjamin and Ramon's sister Enadina. This devastates Enadina, who demands that her brother seek vengeance. As the Arellano forces attack Chapo at an airport, the Sinaloan kingpin escapes, but Cardinal Ocampo is killed in the crossfire. A prominent holy figure being killed due to a drug war causes massive backlash and attention against the warring cartels, prompting President Salinas to publicly crack down against the drug trade. Meanwhile, DEA agent Walt Breslin is now working undercover in El Paso, trying to work his way up the cartel to take them down from the inside. When his operation fails thanks to Amado's cunning machinations, Walt considers moving to Chicago with his wife to live a simpler life, away from the war on drugs. Instead, Walt decides to join join a task force to stop the escalating violence in Tijuana, infuriating his wife. There, Walt works closely with the task force's leader, General Rebollo. The general violently tortures a young narco junior for evidence they can use against the cartel heads, leaving Walt dismayed by the lengths they are willing to go to for so-called justice. Walt and the general nearly capture Benjamin, but he is rescued in a violent shootout by Ramon. Meanwhile, as Chapo tries to flee, he is caught and arrested at the Mexican border. With both Benjamin and Ramon forced into hiding, their sister Anadina takes control of their family's business. Elsewhere, Victor is a crooked cop in Juarez who sets aside his criminal activities in the pocket of the cartel to help look for a missing girl named Teresa. Victor quickly realizes that several young girls have gone missing, only to later be found dead. After finding the young Teresa's body, Victor is inspired to strike a deal with the DEA, using his status as a corrupt cop working with the cartels to serve as their informant against Amato, in exchange for helping bring Teresa's killer to justice. Unfortunately, as Victor gets closer to uncovering the truth, suspecting that Amato's brother Vicente is behind the killings, he is discovered by the cartel and murdered in cold blood. Another death in a history of murders of innocent women that remains prevalent to this day. With the Tijuana and Sinaloa cartels fighting and fracturing, the Juarez cartel rises to dominance, and Amato becomes the most prolific drug trafficker in the entire world. But when his main drug supplier, the Cali cartel, strikes a deal with the government and is then taken down by a rival cartel, Amato is left with no drugs to smuggle, threatening to ruin his empire. Fortunately, he strikes a deal with the rival North Valley cartel to smuggle their drugs. A vengeful Anadina then orders attacks on the Sinaloans, El Mayo, and Amato himself. The spurned rivals all want their respective violent revenge. Amato kills and displays the heads of many of Anadina's men, angering Carlos Hank Gonzalez over this public display of violence, and causing him to threaten to cease his fundings of the Juarez cartel's operations. As the drug war rages on, the Mexican economy completely collapses. With all of his rival cartel leaders on the run, behind bars, or dead, Amato finally decides to retire from the drug business and live a life in peace with his lover Marta. But as he formulates his getaway plan, a local journalist named Andrea valiantly attempts to bring down the cartel corruption. She discovers that General Rebollo is in fact secretly working with both Carlos Hank Gonzalez and Amato's Juarez cartel, and so forces mobilized to arrest the general, while Amato is cut off from Carlos's money, putting his chances of fleeing Mexico in serious jeopardy. As Amato attempts to board a plane to fly himself to safety, a gunfight erupts on the airstrip, destroying his plane and forcing Amato to flee on foot. Amato then tries to get plastic surgery to change his appearance and escape the authorities, but he dies during the operation. Though secretly, he may have faked his death and escaped for a peaceful life with his lover Marta in Chile. In the end, Palma is arrested and reunites with fellow Sinaloa cartel head El Chapo in prison. There, he discovers that Chapo has aligned with Felix Gallardo's former ally Don Neto to have Palma transferred to a further prison, allowing Chapo and his new accomplice El Mayo to run the Sinaloa cartel without him. Benjamin returns from hiding to reunite with his family, ensuring Anadina that they are stronger than ever. But that proves to be false, as El Mayo hunts down and kills Ramon, asserting that Sinaloa has usurped Tijuana for power. Walt then finally meets Andrea, who successfully brought down Amato without having to sell her soul in the process. Walt acknowledges all of the violent acts he committed while working with the traitorous general, confessing that in trying to bring down the evil cartels, he had lost his own sense of goodness. As the series comes to a close, Walt finally transfers back to the US, and though his marriage has fractured, he remains dedicated to fighting the war on drugs in any way he can.